Deep Dive Film School makes no claim of ownership of the film footage used in this episode. The film footage is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Also, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so this is your warning. Welcome to Deep Dive Film School!
This week, we're going to hit you with our Forgotten Gems segment with the 1996 movie Primal Fear.
Let's dive on in. All right, everybody, I am Adam Sherlock.
And I am Adam Pulcher.
And if you like what you see/hear, please like and subscribe. You can find us in all the spaces and places that people find good media.
That's right. We got playlists, we got festivals, we do all sorts of different stuff. This week we're coming to you with our second, I believe, since we've started this channel, our second Forgotten Gems episode.
That's right.
First one we did the Ice Storm. This one we're doing the Richard Gere movie Primal Fear, directed by Gregory Hoblit. His debut as a director, you're probably like, who?
I am. In fact, I don't think I'd ever heard. Here you go. You talk about unknown. I've never heard any human tongue say his name. I saw it and was like, how would one say that? Hoblit. Okay, what else has Gregory Hoblit done?
Well, he has been a producer on some cop TV shows, it looks like. Hill Street Blues and NYPD Blue.
Oh, okay.
And then he likes to direct. This was his debut, like I said. But then he went on to direct a lot of movies that started with the letter F. We got Frequency. We got Fallen. We got Fracture, and a couple of other ones. Fallen, I think, is the Denzel Washington.
I like Fallen. One. Yeah, it's a John Goodman.
I kind of like it too. Yeah, that's not a bad one.
Good.
Frequency's great too. I absolutely love Frequency.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Most recently, he did The Strain. Have you heard of this one, Mr. Horror Buff?
Yeah, this is based on a book co-written by Guillermo del Toro, I believe.
The Strain? Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
I think so. Yeah,
good for you, Mr. Hoblit.
Yeah, if it's the same one I'm thinking of.
Do you think he lives in Hobliton?
I hope he has a round door. That's all I hope. I really, for this being somebody's directorial debut, for the most part, there's one or two little things that don't totally hold up all these years later, but the vast majority of it completely does. It really does.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a reason why we made this one. I think it's one we've always loved, and this probably could easily be mistaken for a Law and Order episode. I think.
Totally.
With some better acting and just it obviously feels a little more cinematic, but I still think there's some stuff here that makes it stick out.
Well, it very often gets referred to just by this sort of this plot twist of the multiple personalities, right?
Sure.
that our character has, and that's sort of the big showy part of it. But on rewatch, again, it made me think sort of in a similar way of the character arc that we saw with Tom Cruise's character in A Few Good Men, that the character arc is very different than what we think it's going to be, even though this movie does still traffic in the exact same kind of tropes we've been talking about this whole festival of sort of like, can I actually save this kid? And I truly believe him. And this is the make or break it, in the dark night of the soul before the trial and all that. It has all those cliches in it. Yep. But actually Richard Gere's character, his arc, and we'll get into this more as we dissect the movie, but it's very different. And I think that's what makes this movie stand out in a lot of ways is this movie is kind of cynical. It kind of toys with a lot of the courtroom cinema stuff that we know and love, right?
No doubt. Richard Gere, obviously, in here. Laura Linney. We got an all-star cast here. Laura Linney, Ed Norton, his debut as well, along with Mr. Hobliton. And then John Mahoney, Alfre Woodard, who plays the judge, Frances McDormand, Locke from Lost, Terry O'Quinn,
the stepfather,
Andre Braugher, and Maura Tierney. All of those are amazing actors. But Gere, like you mentioned, I agree. I think he's one of the most fascinating parts of this movie. He's also in his prime here.
Oh, yeah.
As far as an actor, and man, is he such this weirdly, like, I hate you, but you're really charming douche guy. But like, he does it really well. What happened to Richard Gere? Can I ask you that before we started? Because what was the last thing he was in?
I mean, he went out to pasture wherever old actors that were once sex symbols went. That's where he went, right? Like wherever
he's hanging out with Michael Douglas somewhere.
It's him and Michael Douglas and
Sean Connery.
Him and Warren Beatty are just like sitting on a park bench somewhere watching girls jog by, being like, "Ugh."
I'm going to go ahead and guess that Richard Gere aged a little better than Warren Beatty has.
I don't know. They kind of see. They kind of.
Right.
Sort of. It's that. It is though. It's that like distinguished older man, and then they just like they fall apart like the Titanic. But I will say this.
I mean, he's had gray hair since he was 40, probably.
That is true.
And
so
he probably doesn't look like he's aged today. I don't know. Let's throw up a recent picture of him, and we'll let everyone comment below, and you let us be the judge of how well Gere.
You guys do the hot or not on Richard.
Hot or not, please.
Again, for Deep Dive Film School that always said it's a finger on the pulse of popular media. Go ahead and give us a thumbs up or thumbs down on Richard Gere's sex appeal. You're absolutely right. A fascinating character. I think there's a very dark and jaded version of the law, you know, when we've been sort of thinking about this. And there's later when he is kind of drunk and goes on this diatribe where he actually is honest about how he feels. But everything up to that is covered by this veneer of glitz, right? Like just...
Well, in this first scene, you know, he's this big shot attorney, defense attorney. He's getting interviewed with this cover story, and he's got this great monologue at the beginning talking to this journalist about if you want a conscience, go to a whorehouse. If you want to get fucked, go to court.
Yeah.
So this great kind of opening and a great introduction to kind of who we should expect for the rest of this movie, because I like him as an actor. He's fun to watch on screen. Mm-hmm. He's a good actor, but man, I hate his character in this movie. But maybe that's why it makes this movie so good, is because the quote-unquote hero, who's never really a hero in this movie, he's really pretty selfish and probably the skeeviest lawyer in our festival.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's because we didn't do any John Grisham adaptations, right?
Oh, that's true.
You think about, what's the one with John Travolta where he's trying to help the people that all got cancer from the factory in their town? I can't remember that one, but the name of that one. But
that's a John Grisham?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And it's
Are you sure it's not Michael, where he's an angel?
No, it's not Michael. He's an angel lawyer. He studies angel law. God.
Big market for that.
Yeah, definitely. No. But I just think like it definitely is kind of that very jaded. You know, we mentioned Devil's Advocate as another possible one.
Oh yeah, that's a great one
in the festival. But again, like that version of the law where you're just like, it's beyond ambulance chasers. It's to this point of like before we even meet our main kid who's on trial here,
Aaron. Yep.
They're like, he is already chomping at the bit of like, I can't do this interview even though I'm going to be on the cover story because I got to get back so I can represent this kid because everyone on TV is talking about him.
He wants the glitz and glamour, right?
Yep.
Like you're saying. Mm-hmm.
And then, like you said, our very first scene with Laura Linney, which, boy, I got to say, I think it's this movie going back. This is what gave me my cinematic crush on Laura Linney that has never wavered.
No, I definitely love her very much. As an actress, she's definitely beautiful, if that's what you're getting at.
Just fantastic. She's just incredible to watch on screen, whether it's something like this or even something where her character is very alien, like The Truman Show.
I highly recommend Ozark if you want to see her at some of her best stuff.
I definitely will.
The Jason Bateman show on Netflix.
Right. Another one of my favorite performances of her is... in another movie with Richard Gere, 2002's Mothman Prophecy. I think she's fantastic in that also. But
the Life of David Gale is one that I would put out there too if you want to see Life of David Gale. It is.
Oh, I remember that one. I remember that one.
Excellent movie. Yeah,
I know. It's so sad now we have to say it is a Kevin Spacey movie, but it's a little caveat. But I would say this first interaction that Laura Linney has with Richard Gere just cements what a dick he is, right? Just so gross and just like
he's a charmer for sure, and I really do love their flirtatiousness through the movie. That they're against each other, but they're also I don't know. I was gonna compare it, and this is obviously there's no love interest here in Few Good Men, but Kevin Bacon and Tom Cruise, where they're pals through the movie.
I thought of that. They have a bar scene. They in both movies they have a bar scene.
That's true. They do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they call each other out. No, and so I love their relationship throughout this movie, even though it's like mentor versus protege kind of thing, where he left in a really bad way from the DA's office and she stuck, and he kind of wanted her to come with him, and that didn't happen. And he thinks
he knows what's best for her. Sure. And even though
he's definitely a skeevy dude, but this, to add to the glitz and glamour, the party that he meets her at, he's shaking hands and kissing babies, shaking hands with the Archbishop. Probably last time
anybody does
shook.
Yeah,
anyone does.
Last time that hand got shook before it got turned into veal. Yeah, definitely.
And but it kind of shows the setup of the movie is great. I love it. It's really well done. And then we get this build up to this graphic murder that kind of comes out of nowhere. If you're not ready for it.
My God, the first time, that is a holy shit moment for sure.
Sure. I think this whole movie is kind of a holy shit moment. The first time you see it, obviously, once you kind of know how it ends and what happens, that even though this does still totally hold up, it's kind of like a really good horror movie. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like once you know the twist, you're like, "Oh, that's amazing!" And
I gotta watch it again from the top because I need to see this stuff. Yeah.
And knowing everything, and so I think it holds its own from that whole thing. But we get Richard Gere kind of a little bit of history with kind of the people he deals with, and he's got this mob boss, the dude from Scarface. Scarface's brother. I forgot his actual name, but his name's Joey in the movie, and he's kind of this mob boss, and he gets off.
Has that guy ever aged? I mean, if you go, this is 1996. He looks exactly the same as he does in Scarface. Well, meanwhile, Al Pacino looks like an old shoe by 96, right? Like, how did that happen?
That's a good point. Donnie Brasco point in case.
Totally.
But, he's wheeling and dealing in this first scene, and Locke from Lost gets really pissed at him. And he's like, "You're as disgusting as the people that you represent." And so, he has this reputation of leaving the DA's office in a not so good way. And
he's
then
a turncoat, right?
Yep, exactly. The money's better, as he says later, which is great. Then we kind of build this kind of outside perspective from like a mailman or somebody, and the windows inside the bishop's room are being busted out.
Oh, it's so violent. Even though we don't see a lot of it, it is just, even those windows busting out is really creepy.
For sure. And we obviously see the aftermath and everything. And then we get our introduction to Edward Norton. His first movie as well got nominated for this. You can see why.
Apparently there was a whole line of young actors trying to get this role.
2,000. You go. There's a list of everyone you would possibly think of in the 90s that could have gotten this role, but there was 2,000 actors that tried out for this. But it's people like Will Wheaton, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Leonardo DiCaprio, all these people attached at some point, or really wanted it, or were pining for it, and you could see why, because this really lets you show your chops. I mean, like, he got nominated for it, so but it was such a long process that Gere almost left the movie because it was taking so long. So
it probably felt like it was just hinging on it in this way of like, if this, which makes sense because no matter how good Gere was, if the kid who played Aaron wasn't believable, it would be a bad episode of LA of Law and Order, right? It would be a bad episode.
LA Law.
I know it'd be a bad episode of LA Law too.
Even deeper.
Yeah. But it would be, right? It would be corny to a degree that's just eye rolling, but I
agree. It wouldn't work.
Performance that buoys everything else that's happening.
No doubt. I promise Richard Gere was happy with this after the fact.
Oh yeah.
I guess maybe not promise, but like he makes him look good in this movie
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure. But we get Aaron Stampler, who's the one accused of the crime. We see him on TV, OJ style, running across the railroad tracks, and you know, he looks scared. He's just like this stuttering little southern pale
this
boy,
little meek,
and
this meek little kid, right?
Yeah, and he's got blood all over him and all this stuff, and you know, and there you go. There's the setup for the movie. There's everything we need. And so now we know what's happening. Gere's taking it on, and we go and meet Aaron for the first time.
You know what's interesting about this too at the same time is while that is the main story that's happening, and it never totally leaves that story, but I love that there's this secondary plot of the kind of mob boss character of Terry O'Quinn and John Mahoney and the Archbishop and all these other characters that gave me a feeling of something like The Fugitive, and I obviously in part because it's a Chicago film, right? But the other part of it is because there's a murder, but there potentially might be something bigger, a bigger conspiracy that's happening under the highest echelons of government in Chicago, right?
And
with like
and
the
religion.
holiest of the holy. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. And it's like there's something about that makes it really interesting, that feels like it has this higher level of intrigue. And I love that it toys with that a lot. And so like even at the end of it, it does keep it really interesting and keeps it tense in this way, because there is a feeling of like, well, who is Aaron? Like, okay, he was an altar boy, formerly homeless. Of course, nowadays, you can say in 96, maybe we were all a little more naive. Nowadays, like the second that you're like, oh, he was an altar boy, so it's a sex thing, right? Like it takes you like
that's where my
0.5
wife
seconds.
went. Yeah, my wife is like, oh, I see where this is going. I'm like, well, yeah, but not completely. It's way more in depth than that.
Yeah, because there's more stuff. Like, yeah, but it's
and that's definitely a big part of this, and we'll get to that. But I think that's those intricacies that you're talking about earlier that keep you guessing. I think that also include just a bit more depth to all of our characters and their side stories and what's kind of going on with them. Makes this not a Law and Order episode. It makes this a great movie and a forgotten gem.
Well, yeah, let's talk about some of those people. Whether you're talking about like, I mean, God, you talk about these peripheral characters. Andre Brower from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
So good, yeah.
Frances McDormand as the courtroom shrink. And then Alfre Woodard, which I just want to say as the judge. And I go, and she's one of those like that women to me, right? Where you're like, oh yeah, what's she? So I just with a little swipe of my paw on the keyboard was like, what do I know her from? And it turns out from
Everything.
my life. Yes. Grand Canyon, LA Law, St. Elsewhere, True Blood, Grey's Anatomy, Marvel's Luke Cage. She's won like multiple Emmys and been nominated for like the most Emmys, I think, of any like actress or something. Like it's insane. And I was like,
you do love Grey's Anatomy and Luke Cage.
It's true. Well, it's true. No, but I do love Grand Canyon.
No, she is definitely that person for sure.
And it's great because she gets to show up and she has 3 or 4 scenes where she just barely taps the gas to let Gere's character know, like, you're not doing that in my courtroom. Right,
she was the main actress in Clemency that I saw at Sundance a few years ago, which I highly recommend.
Oh,
and
cool!
Don't worry, she can hold her own. If you're wondering if she's not just a supporting actress,
that's what I'm saying. Is like, and it's that economy of the actor thing. She just has to show up, and you're like, all right, Gere, don't go sideways in her courtroom, man. she'll go after you, right? Like, I love that.
Yeah. So let's get into Gere and Aaron meeting the first time. You know, we get him doing his lawyery stuff, and he's very hard nosed and is like, I don't care, I don't want to know, you know. And I'm just like, why don't you know what? Like, he's doing things that he's just like, it's not my job to know if you did or not. We'll just present the case to the facts and blah blah blah. And then obviously that gets a little more personal, and he starts. He starts believing that Aaron didn't do this, and that there's a third man is Aaron's case. There's a third man in the room. But, you know, we also get a little bit of the history of him with the bishop and kind of, he was like a father to me, you know, and getting a little more idea of what happened inside that room.
Right, exactly. And at the same time, we're also starting to meet some of the peripheral characters around Aaron, some of the other altar boys, this girl that was his girlfriend,
Linda,
give or take, Linda. Mm-hmm. You know, and this,
we don't really ever meet her, and the other altar boy we meet is you know, pretty brief for the most part.
Well, and I love, but I love this. It almost reminded
important, though.
It very important. Well, and it reminded me almost of sort of the way that there's this beautiful chase scene where they're trying to confront this other altar boy, and it reminded me of sort of the way that Terry Gilliam deals with a city, which is there's this city and it's all polished and looks nice, and then there's what's underneath that, right? You think of something like the Fisher King, where it's like, oh no, there's an entire world of like barrels on fire and like junkies and people living in tents.
Yep.
And it's great to watch these super polished courtroom lawyers chasing this guy down into this like pretty like, it almost feels like that they're headed into hell, right? I mean, it has this very like visceral feel to it.
Yeah, they go in through this building and these cement walls are like broken doors, like someone's just put a sledgehammer and that's the door.
Yeah, and it's like Candyman or something, right?
Yeah, and but yeah, I did think it was funny to see the lawyers running through the streets chasing after someone. I don't know why I thought that was funny. It's just like, look, would he really do that? Like, I know he's losing the case right now, but would he really do that?
I don't know. At that point, I didn't care. I was just like,
I didn't either. That is pretty much the only action scene in the whole movie.
Yeah,
is that chase scene?
That and the murder of the Archbishop probably are the two like sort of
sure,
like,
but we don't even see that. That's all behind. Yeah, we don't even see that. But he does get a nickname, Butcher Boy of St. Mark's, which I love. Mm-hmm. Something that when I started hating Richard Gere is when he started manipulating Aaron, and one of the first scenes they're together. I think he's probably in his cell at this point, and he's like, "No, don't even say not guilty. Say what I want you to say, or let me talk." And you know, he's very demanding. I'm like, "You're already trying to manipulate this kid who's scared out of his mind."
Yeah, and you're like, he's like, "Oh yeah, no, make that face. That's the face I want you to make."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting, and that really the combination of that, and then this the sex tape that's discovered, which is referred to as purging the devil.
Yeah,
super gross. But you know, those elements, and then you know, really the gentle prodding by Frances McDormand is where we suddenly meet Roy. And Roy, as this secondary personality that Aaron has, we just get a glimpse of him. And then when he's confronted by Gere's character and he transforms fully into Roy,
he gets full on thrown against the wall against his will here. Richard Gere, I mean, by Edward Norton. He did not tell him he was going to do that. He just did that.
Wow.
And so his look is genuine, and it looks genuine. And I love that he did that. I love that he had the balls to push Richard Gere against the wall in his first movie.
I know.
Amazing. Obviously, this is kind of the pinnacle of the movie. This is what's made him famous. You could see why he's such a great actor, how he beat out 2,000 people for this. That swing, that kind of off-on clown face, you know, like of like sad clown, happy clown. Mm-hmm. And he does it like that on a dime.
And think about it. 2 years after this, Ed Norton does American History X. So that idea of being able to play the duality of the two roles, and you go to American History X, he has to play.
Same with the score.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, the score, he does that too. Or he's playing a mentally handicapped person, or he's pretending to play a mentally handicapped person. But
like kind of how he is here is just like this dim-witted kind of naive kid.
Right. And I think the interesting thing with something like American History X is he's playing 3 different versions of a character, right? Like the hardcore Nazi, the bewildered younger kid, who's kind of under his father's thumb, and then the guy who gets out of prison, right? And to be like, in one movie, all he has is a difference of hair, right? and facial hair, and like somehow he's able to do that just 2 years after this, which meant he was what, 22, 23 when he did that. It's crazy. Man, it's crazy.
Man, it's American History X is such an amazing movie, and also one of his great movies. I know he gets a bad rap as an actor, like that's hard to work with, who is just kind of controlling on set. But I appreciate that sometimes with actors, especially when I believe and trust in them as an actor. He's never really had too many shitty movies. I even like the Incredible Hulk movie that no one else likes.
I like it too. I like that one too.
He gets that rap, but at the same time, like, that's what you kind of want as a producer or a director, I would think, is somebody who's that bought in to what you're doing. If they're going to make it that much better.
It'd be different if he couldn't bring it. If he wasn't able to do this, I'd be like, okay. Like, Bruce Willis is like that, right? He's apparently notoriously difficult to work with. And I'm like, you've been Bruce Willis for 30 years in your movies.
But let's get into the courtroom drama stuff. Janet, Laura Linney's character, as the prosecuting attorney, she gets the job. And, so we get them pitted against each other. But the way they kind of introduce the courtroom drama, like opening statements are happening as like he's getting in his car to go to the courtroom. And then by the time you're in the courtroom, they're almost already interviewing people, and they do the editing's excellent here because they really do a really good job of filling a lot of space and a lot of stuff into a pretty small amount of time, because this movie is probably not as much about the courtroom drama. It is at the end, of course, but it's really more about the investigation, like a lot of these movies. But I thought it was really interesting because they're both interviewing the same character or the same person on the witness stand, but they're banging through questions, and you're getting really, it's progressing quickly. And I thought it was a really interesting way, rather than you could easily draw that out and be a big deal and have it be 10, 15 minutes and show all the opening statements. And they just pass over all that stuff. I thought it was really interesting.
And of course, this idea that the Roy character,
the third man,
this third man,
he doesn't know, but he doesn't know about Roy at this point.
That's right. He doesn't. Well, and that Roy pops up after he has already said not guilty, so he can't change the plea to insanity now, right? Like you can't. You already pled in one direction, and so he's like, how do I suss out the Roy character? How do I suss out the idea of mental illness?
Dirty lawyer trickster stuff and slips stuff in there and pretends it's not him. He's a skeevy dude for sure.
Well, yeah, and even the sex tape, he has his assistant go and leave it, and then she calls him to the stand. All that stuff is so good.
I always thought that this third person case was pretty weak, even when I didn't know the ending to this movie. Yeah. And knew who Roy was. Like watching him try to make the case for it, it's just, he almost pulls too much of, which you probably shouldn't do as a lawyer. As a juror in 12 Angry Men, Henry Fonda constantly is like, but is it possible? But here he's like, but is it possible that it happened? It seems like he's really just reaching more than anything.
You know what's weird about that though? In so because I don't know about you, but I am a total true crime podcast dork. Like that's what I listen to when I walk my dogs, is like true crime podcasts. And there's one I listen to all the time that's called Court Junkie, and it's very good because she kind of just takes everybody through it beat by beat. And dude, so many defense attorneys are just pulling at straws left and right, where they're like, there may have been a mob connection, or this person was a pedophile, someone said that, or over here, it could have been a stranger. And I'm like, but don't you still have to have one defense? And it's like, you do, but that doesn't mean that defense attorneys don't do this all the time, where they are exactly doing that. They're just throwing in one monkey wrench after another, and each monkey wrench in big bold letters says on it, possible, right? Like they just, it's the thing that they do. And so it is, in that sense, it's not, I agree, it's not good, lawyering, but it's at least accurate in that sense from the stuff that I've heard, where it is like, just confuse everybody, just make people think, oh, dude, people get murdered every day, and it's in a room with a person who's innocent. It happens all the time. Right. And as long as you can get that idea across to a jury, then they're going to be like, I don't know what I think, but this poor kid didn't do it. Right.
It's whoever tells the better story. Right.
Yeah. It's like, well, whoever can make the most smoke in the room so you can't see what the hell you're looking at. Right. That's that's what it feels like.
Us here in America deal with that on a daily basis.
Oh, buddy.
What do you think of the idea that Richard Gere believes he didn't do it? Like, he's convinced. He convinces the defense lawyer, who usually doesn't care about these things, that he didn't do it.
I don't know if he would be making as big of an ass out of himself as he does if he didn't. Because it's helpful that you see his confidants that are his staff also incredibly frustrated with him because he's acting so differently than he ever normally does. And I feel like that's helpful for us as the audience to get that inclination. Now, what's interesting is that even in the midst of that, he still goes on these sort of flights of fancy, again, like the Joey Paneri thing and sort of settling these scores, like sending her the tape. There are these things that he does that are still obviously, even though he's having a change of heart to some degree, like this is probably the first person that he's defended that he actually thinks is innocent, or like has gotten his heart behind that kind of in a way, right?
Well, he sees him as this sick kid who doesn't deserve to die. Right? Like that's why he kind of wants to introduce the sex tape into everything.
Well, exactly. But I think that he again has this very take no prisoners attitude towards that, where even though he's all flirty with Laura Linney and asks her out, and she says, how can you have the best timing in the courtroom and the worst timing in your life, right? Like you, and she's like, ask me later, you idiot. But then, because he delivers that tape, he basically ruins her job. And then when she laments to him later, and I'm bouncing around a little bit, but at the very end, she laments to him like, hey, you completely fucked me over. And his answer is, well, you should have left years ago. And you're like, oh my God, yeah, you had a change of heart, but you haven't changed at all, right? You are still the same slimy asshole that you've always been. And I think that goes back to what I was saying about, this very interesting character arc, is that it goes through all the motions for him to have this character arc and this change.
I agree.
But it leaves us, I mean, literally, imagine if before we have our twist ending, which we'll get to soon, we had just ended with the conversation between him and Laura Linney, where he told her she should have left her job years ago, and he's still trying to feel up her bum and her hips. Like, we would have felt so gross, right? We would have been like, what was the point of watching this movie? Right?
Yeah, no, I think his internal struggle is the most important and fun part of the movie, because he usually can fly by or make a deal or whatever he's used to doing. But here he has to actually think about what has happened and the proof that's there or the proof that's not there and the motive that's there. And he has to actually step out of himself and look at it as a person. And when it's obvious that he was wrong, which apparently he isn't very much if he's this big hotshot lawyer, it's pretty interesting to see that evolution of his character. And then he does kind of end up resulting to his old snaky self for the end of the movie, and does totally fuck over Laura Linney, which is and he's like, yeah, sorry, it happens. You should just move on anyway.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's like when we first meet her, she's very severe towards him, and we only have a little bit of insight into what kind of a dude she is. And by the ending, we're like, oh, no wonder she acts that way around him.
She's no walk in the park either from a relationship standpoint. It doesn't sound like just looking at how condescending she is to Frances McDormand on the stand. She's like, this Roy, or like she just can't fathom this, this thing that he's pulling out of his ass here.
I mean, it is pretty soap opera shit, though, right?
Totally. I ate it up. I ate it up.
Oh yeah, no, I did too, because it all hinges on Norton's performance. If it was not as good as it was, we wouldn't care, right?
We get Richard Gere just trying to figure out how he's going to get this Roy character out in court. And I think where he gets his motives, they don't ever say it, but they show him watching the interviews that Frances McDormand and you get this part where she's got him on tape of, how the fuck should I know? Yeah. And he kind of like has this face that looks like Roy. Yep. And it's never looked like Aaron, because he's just been the sweetest can be, nicest Southern little stuttering kid. And he sees that and he's like, I need to antagonize him enough to come out inside of court. And unfortunately that comes to a halt. It's actually pretty quick. Actually, I remember I thought he was Roy on the stand for much longer than he actually is. He actually just, I don't know if he was on there long enough to convince them, except for that he goes and tries to choke out Janet, Laura Linney's character, and it ends pretty quickly, and he's in handcuffs and on the floor. And then Aaron's woke up again, and he has these spells and these blackouts, and those are his defaults where he goes, right?
And to talk about, you talked about this like snake-like attitude that Richard Gere's character has, and reverting back to that, it's like it's not just that he knows if he antagonizes, because he could have kept him on up there, and he could have put him on the hot seat until he got Roy to come out. But again, in this, like, because this movie has kind of just as many icky sexual politics as A Few Good Men does, right? Where, even when Terry O'Quinn is talking to Laura Linney, she's like, "What?" He's like, "Well, it doesn't bug you that you're up against him, right? I mean, weren't the two of you balling for a while?" And you're just like, "Wow, shit, that's the kind of stuff she has to put up with being in this job, right?" And so it's like, this is another piece of that where it's like, because she is tough, he's like, oh, well, she'll be the perfect foil to drag Roy's personality out, no matter what might happen. And boy, he stands by and lets it get just about as bad as it can possibly get before he intervenes, right? Like you just go, sure, yeah. He stands by while this woman that he's said multiple times that he wants to date again, gets attacked by his multiple personality having client, right? Like he stands by because he's like he needs to actually attack her so that everyone can see this.
So right? I can win.
So I can win. And you just go, God, you are such a piece of shit. Like,
yeah, I mean, I didn't think there was anything super egregious. I mean, if we want to pick out every chauvinist male in the last 60 years of film, we could take a long time doing that. But but for the most part, I think that kind of stuff, like, yeah, it's of the times, unfortunately, and I'm sure that still happens today.
I mean, I guess it is, but it also, and maybe I'm just looking at it through a different lens, but I did feel like it was a thing that was there for us to notice that it was there. Personally, that's what I saw.
She definitely gets a similar treatment to Demi Moore, and
that's what I'm saying.
I think to a degree, though she has a bit more power than Demi Moore did in that movie, in this one. But again, all for naught. She's ruined. He admittedly is arrogant, and it's really, honestly, I don't know why she would ever date him again, but she probably does in Primal Fear 2. But the final reveal
this time it's personal. This time it's even more primal.
More fear. More primal.
Twice the fear.
So we get this final reveal. He's tackled her. He's been arrested again. He's in this cage, and he comes in, and they basically get a bench trial, non-guilty for reasons of insanity. Right. And so he gets off. He's going to go to a hospital and could be out within a few months. And we get the reveal kind of like, oh, it happened. The twist happened. I can't believe it. And then you get this extra twist on top of it at the end here, which I think is amazing. It defines, I think, the movie. It's what turns it into a great movie.
I agree.
From a good movie, and it almost got away. And I love the writing here. It's so good. The ending exposition, I guess, was like over 6 pages. But like, apparently the director just let him and Gere go. Like, but to Norton's credit, you know, not only did he think of pushing Gere against that wall or have him being stuttering kid, that wasn't in the script. Gere just did that. I'm sorry, Norton just did that. But at the end here, he also ad-libs the slow clap of him figuring it out, and he turns into Roy again. And but just by happenstance, he figures it out because Aaron says, "Tell her that I'm sorry I choked her." Yeah. And I thought that was a great reveal, and he just barely figures it out and turns back. He's like, "I thought you didn't remember," and then the slow clap.
Well, awesome then and the way he says to him, he's like, "Oh man, I was gonna let it go. You looked so happy."
He did. Right? He's like, "Hey, I got you off. I'm the star. I'm going to go talk to all these reporters."
And he says, he's like, we were dancing. You and me, we were dancing. Like, that whole part is great. Now, I will say, interestingly, Abby watched this, and she had never seen it before. Oh, you should watch it. It's great. She loved it. And then these last 15 minutes, and I didn't notice this, she said, the soundtrack, the music, the score becomes so egregious. She's like
saxophone-y for sure.
Yeah, she was like total saxophone, total like noir saxophone. And she said, but not just that, it got so like pokey in the ribs, like huh. She's like that I knew another twist was coming. She's like, when it happened, I wasn't surprised because the soundtrack was so bad by that point that it was pushing me to be like, something else is going to happen.
That's funny because I didn't really notice the score through this whole movie until this third act, that she's referencing here, and I did start to notice it, but I never kind of linked that up to something else is coming.
I didn't either, but it's super interesting for her to have not had any idea about this twist redemption, this last sort of nail in the coffin. Like, she had no clue that was coming, and it still she was like, it ruined the twist for me because it was like the tone was wrong for the fact that this kid was actually not guilty. Like, the musical tone was wrong, and I was like, oh, that's super interesting. So interesting. Last thing I'll say about this, though, with that twist and the fact that it happens with less than 2 minutes, probably less minute and 90 seconds left in the movie. It's so great because it doesn't leave any room for our character to come to grips with how he's truly been manipulated. And that doesn't happen super often in movies. Like, it does not happen that often that the twist just
Usual Suspects is probably the closest one I can think of.
Oh, that's a good one.
Of my head.
Yes, but it pulls the rug out from underneath you,
and then
boom,
credits.
And then credits. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think it does. He does make a decision in those 90 seconds when he decides not to walk out where all the press is and he goes out the back door.
Definitely,
you know what decision he's made, and he's like, well, he tricked me, so I'm not going to say anything. Is my guess.
But at the same time, you're also like, that's probably the first time that dude's ever done that. So what the hell is the rest of his life going to be like? Right? Like, it's
Primal
kind of
Fear
amazing.
2.
Yeah, Primal Fear 2. Twice the primal, twice the fear. Too primal, too fear.
Great festival. This was definitely a forgotten gem. Please go see it if you haven't. Hopefully you have, because we just ruined the whole thing for you.
We say it in the bumper at the beginning. You got to watch it first.
That's right. You got to watch it. We're going to spoil the hell out of this. But the fest was awesome with the Courtroom Cinema. This was a great ending to it. We're moving on to our next festival. We're going to do, what was it again? It's a horror fest.
It's cerebral nightmares.
Cerebral Nightmares. That should be fun.
Yeah, for October.
So we're going to get into that, and we're going to get our next festival. I believe we're going to start off with Barton Fink.
Yes.
So look for that, and we're going to get into a new fest. Super excited for October and Halloween, our favorite time of the year.
Definitely.
Great excuse to watch some fun movies. But thank you very much. Like and subscribe. We're here every week, all the places and spaces. Thanks very much.
Bye, you guys. Abby was trying to explain to me a part of a dream that she had the other night. And
your wife has fucked up dreams.
She has this still involved murder, like most of her dreams, but this wasn't what she was trying to describe to me. She was trying to describe this like metal object, and I was like, "Oh, it's like the character TikTok from Return to Oz." Mm-hmm. And she was like, I've never seen that. And I was like, look it up. And so she looked it up, and sure enough, she's like, yeah, like his body. That's exactly what it looked like. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, you've never seen Return to Oz?
Yeah, that seems like one she would love.
And she said, no, I know, but I know Michael Jackson's in it. And I realized that what she thought was that it was The Wiz.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I told her, I said, no, he's not. And I said, but that should be your answer anytime anybody asks you any movie that you haven't seen. So if somebody's like, you haven't seen Lawrence of Arabia? You go, no, but I know Michael Jackson's in it. Because you would seem like the craziest person on the planet, right? If somebody's like, dude, you haven't seen On the Waterfront? And you're like, no, I know Michael Jackson's in it, though.
That's amazing. That's so good. On Golden Pond?
It would just make people think that you're... Yeah. No, I haven't. But I know Michael Jackson's in it.
Wasn't he like 7 or 8 when that came out? Or like, yeah, but he's in it. Right?
Wouldn't you think to yourself... You would think to yourself, like, what movie can they possibly be thinking of?
Haven't you seen Legally Blonde 2?
No, but I know Michael Jackson's in that.
Yeah.
You haven't seen Schindler's List?